Hi friends, welcome to First Studies YouTube channel. This is part 39 in Azure Data Factory real-time scenarios playlist. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to capture changed data using data flows. That means let's assume you have a source and you have a destination. Now you want to make sure by comparing source data and destination data, whatever the data changed in the source, and then you want to take only that changed data and then do your further processing. So how to capture that changed data using data flows in the Azure Data Factory. This is what we are going to discuss in this video. Let's go into demo. So let me go to browser where I have already opened a blob storage. This is a data lake storage where there is a container called sample container. Inside this container there is a folder called data and there is a file called employees.csv file. In this file we have this data. If you see ID, name, gender columns and salary column, and 3 employees information is there. So first employee ID is Mahir, male with 3000 salary, and then second employee is Pradeep, male with 3000, and there is a third employee called Kranti. So now let's assume this is my source data and I have a SQL DB, and inside this SQL DB also I have a employees information, but here I have only 2 employees. If you see here, Mahir and Pradeep, and if you see closely observe, this Mahir data is different here in the SQL DB. Here we see salary as 2000, but if you see the salary for that employee here, it is 3000. That means this row is changed in the source. Okay, consider this as a source data. And also when I compare with the sync data or when the target data, the employee ID3 is missing here. So that means this is also a new data. So we want to capture, whenever we try to process a source data, we want to compare this source data with the sync data and then identify the changed data. So in this case, this row and this row should be identifiable for us to process that rows according to our need. So how to capture this changed information by comparing source and sync data using data flows actually. So this is what our requirement. Let's try to implement this in a practical demo. So for this, what I will do, I will actually create a new column on top of source file data and also sync data. That column is nothing but like a hashed column of all other columns. I will practically show you that so that you will make sense of it. So here inside this data factory I created a data flow. Let me add a source and let's name this maybe like emp source. Okay, employee source, and I have already created a data set for it. You see employee csv. If I open this data set is pointing to sample container data folder employees.csv file only. Okay, so let me go back to data flow. Let me minimize this and also let me minimize these properties here. And here if I go to data preview and if I perform this refresh, I should see the source file data here. So let's wait for the data to load here. See, we got all the 3 employees information, and if you closely observe, employee ID1 has a salary of 3000. So now what we will be doing, let's add another source here, and this source is going to be a data from my SQL table. So for my SQL table I have already created a data set. I am selecting the data set here. If I open this data set, I should see it is pointing to my employees table. See, it is pointing to it. So let me go back to data flow here, and now right now I selected this is let me rename this like employee table. This is my target table first basically. So because I want to compare my source file data and the target table data, so I should create a source transformation for both of them. So let's go to data preview and let me refresh here and see whether we are able to fetch the data from my SQL table or not. See, we got 2 employees information, but here employee ID1 has a salary of 2000. Employee ID2, there is no change in comparison with the source. And also in the source, as I said, there is another row called employee ID3. Okay, so let's go back to data factory. Now we added two data sets as a 2 source transformations here. Now let's try to add a derived column transformation here to add an extra column on top of our data sources, and this column is going to be a hash column. So I will be name it like a hash CSV. So that is what the name I want to give for this new column, and let's try to give the hash CSV is the column name. This is the transformation name what I am giving here, and this is the actual column name what it will appear. So on top of this CSV file data, I am creating a new column, and this column is going to compute a hashed value or a signature value from the existing columns. So that means let me open this expression builder and explain you this. So let me double click this expression builder to open it. So there is something called SHA-2 function. So this is SHA-2 function. What it will do, if you pass some value, it will encrypt that value and it will give a signature value or a hashed value. So for this SHA-2, what I am going to supply is for this SHA2 function, firstly we need to supply this SHA code, that is 256, and then here, for example, in my input schema I will be seeing all the columns, right? ID column, name column, gender column. So if I want to generate a hash data for the ID column data, then I should use that column name. So what you need to do it, the change may be there in any of the column, right? We are not sure whether the ID column is changed or the name column is changed or gender. So we should try to create a hashed column based upon on the columns. So for that, either you manually type all the column names like this, like ID comma name comma gender comma salary. So all the columns I manually typed it, or the best way is there is a inbuilt function called columns. This function will get you all the columns from the input stream, that means from the input to data set. So when you use this function here, SHA2 with the columns, it is going to take all the columns from the CSV file, and then it is going to generate a hashed column. So let's try to hit this data preview and let's try to refresh it here and make sure whether we are able to compute the hash column for our source data properly here or not. So let's wait for the results to fetch here. Okay, see, we generated a hash columns. See, there is a new column created with this. Now similarly we are going to generate a hash column on top of our SQL also. So add a derived column transformation. So for this transformation I am going to name like hash SQL, something like that. Let me use the same name even for the column name as well here. And then here let's open this expression builder and the same thing. So let's try to create a hash column. 256 is the numerical value to pass, and columns function will get you all the columns from my SQL table. So let me hit save and finish, and if I go to data preview and if I refresh it, it should generate a hash column for both the rows, because in our SQL database we have only 2 rows, right? So let's wait for the data to preview here. But what we expect is the hash value whatever it will generate for the row number 2 should be same even for the table data and also even for the file data. Why? Because this row number 2 data is same, right? It was not changed, so it should give the same hash value, right? But you will see a difference there. If you see here for this Pradeep, the hash value starts with CF5B3C, right? So remember this. Now if I am going to hash value of CSV, if you see for the Pradeep, the hash value is different, right? It is 6119. So why the difference is, basically whenever you try to create a hash value, you need to make sure even the data types should match. If you see inside my CSV file, if I go to projection, all the columns came as a strings. But if you see my SQL database table here, if I expand or you can check it here itself, right? Go to this employee table and you go to the schema. See, ID came as an integer, salary came as a integer. But in our case, in the CSV, everything came as a string. So we need to make sure the data types between your source system and the sync system where you want to perform this comparison should match. The data types also should match and the data in the columns also should match. Then only the hash will be generated as a equal values. So now I changed it. Now let me go to data preview in the source transformation of the CSV file and let's refresh it here. Okay, now I can see ID column came as an integer. See here 1 2 3, that means it's an integer. Even salary column came as an integer. Now I am going to the hash transformation, which I mean derived column transformation, where I am computing the hash. And now let's go to data preview and let's refresh here. This time whatever the hash column we generate for the employee D2 will be exactly same with the employee D2 in the SQL table. I will show you that in a bit. Let's wait for the data to fetch here. Now if you see the hash value of this employee 2 is CF5B3CEE, right? The same thing you will be seeing even hashed in the hash value of the SQL as well. See here, right? So that's how. So we need to make sure whenever you create a hash values, make sure to match the data types as well. So once you have the hash column created on top of the both the data, simply use exist transformation to do the comparison between this hash column data alone to filter the changed data. So using the exist transformation, I am trying to take input of this hash CSV transformation and also hash SQL. So when I do that, see exit transformation between these two, and the condition inside the exit transformation what I am going to use is take the hash value from the CSV file and also take the hash value from the SQL file and do a equals comparison. If some hash value is not matching, that means that is a changed data. So give me that changed data alone. So now let's go to data preview and let's try to refresh and see the results. Great. See, now here we got only employee ID 1 information and employee ID 3 information. Employee ID 2 information didn't came. Why? Because employee ID 2 information is not changed when you compare with the source and sync data. But employee ID 1 information is changed, the salary was different, and employee ID 3 is missing inside in the SQL table. So this is also new data. So all the changed data, when in comparison with the source and sync, we are able to capture it very properly using this hash. After this, if you want to load this data into some sync table or into some if you want to do further more process also, you can do it. So in this way, using this hash column, we can very easily compare our source and sync data and then identify the changed data. Okay, so I hope you got an idea how to capture the changed data using data flows in the data factory. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get the notifications whenever I add videos. Thank you so much.